Daniel was 34 and exhausted. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the deeper kind, the kind that creeps in after years of doing everything right and still feeling strangely behind. His alarm rang at 5:45 every morning. Gym, quick shower, coffee in a travel mug, office by 7:30. Most days he left after 8 at night. No one questioned Daniel's work ethic. Managers trusted him. Coworkers depended on him. If a project was failing, Daniel was the one they called. If a deadline looked impossible, Daniel stayed. He wore that reputation like armor. The reliable one, the grinder, the guy who never stops. But late one evening, sitting alone under the cold glow of office lights, Daniel noticed something he couldn't ignore anymore. The people moving ahead in the company weren't working like him. They didn't stay the latest. They didn't volunteer for every problem. They didn't seem constantly exhausted, yet somehow their careers moved faster. Promotions, better projects, more influence. Daniel stared at the quarterly reports open on his laptop. 3 spreadsheets, 12 tabs, dozens of tiny tasks he had promised to finish tonight. And suddenly a quiet question slipped into his mind. If I keep doing this for 5 more years, what exactly changes? The thought sat there, heavy, uncomfortable. Because Daniel had built his entire identity on one belief: hard work always pays off. Work harder than everyone, stay longer, push more, and eventually the results come. That belief had guided every decision of his adult life. But something about tonight felt different. For the first time, the belief didn't feel motivating, it felt incomplete. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. Across the office floor, rows of empty desks sat in silence. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. For years, being the last one working had felt like proof. Proof he cared more, proof he deserved more. But tonight another thought crept in. What if being last to leave isn't a sign you're winning? What if it's a sign you're stuck? Daniel didn't like that thought, so he tried to ignore it. He opened another file, answered another email, adjusted another number, but the question kept returning, louder each time. What if effort isn't the problem? What if direction is? Most people never ask that, because effort is simple. Effort feels noble. You can measure it. You can brag about it. You can convince yourself that as long as you're trying hard enough, things will eventually work. Direction is different. Direction is brutal, because direction asks a dangerous question. Are you climbing the right mountain, or just climbing faster? Daniel looked at the glass reflection of himself in the dark window. Tired eyes, wrinkled shirt, half-finished coffee. 5 years of grinding, 5 years of proving himself. And yet his life felt strangely unchanged. His salary had grown, but not dramatically. His responsibilities had increased, but not meaningfully. His schedule had become heavier, but his influence hadn't. It was like running harder on a treadmill. The speed increases, the sweat increases, but the scenery never changes. And that realization hit him harder than he expected. Because Daniel wasn't lazy, he wasn't careless. If anything, he was doing too much, too many projects, too many responsibilities, too many late nights fixing problems that weren't even his. He thought back to something his father once said, while teaching him how to drive. Speed doesn't matter if the road is wrong. At the time it sounded like simple advice. Tonight it felt like a warning. Daniel stared at his screen again, then slowly closed the laptop. Not finished, just closed. The quiet in the office suddenly felt louder. For the first time in years, he wasn't solving a problem. He was questioning the system, and the system had one dangerous flaw. It rewarded visible effort, not strategic direction. The hardest workers were often the busiest, but the busiest weren't always the ones moving forward. Daniel began replaying the last few years in his mind. Every late night, every emergency task, every quick favor that turned into extra work. At the time, it felt like progress. Now it looked more like accumulation. More weight, more noise, more motion, but not necessarily movement. He realized something unsettling. Hard work multiplies effort. But if your direction is wrong, hard work multiplies the mistake. You don't just waste time, you waste years. The thought made his chest tighten, because if that was true, then something even more uncomfortable might also be true. Daniel might not be behind because he worked too little. He might be behind because he worked in the wrong direction. And once that possibility enters your mind, something shifts. Effort stops feeling heroic. It starts feeling risky, because effort without direction is like rowing harder while facing the wrong shore. You don't arrive faster. You just get lost sooner. Daniel stood up and walked toward the window. The city outside was quiet. Street lights, empty roads, the distant hum of traffic. For years he believed success was simple. Outwork everyone. But standing there, he realized something almost no one teaches ambitious people. Hard work is powerful, but power without direction is dangerous. Because the real question isn't how hard you're working. The real question is something far more uncomfortable. Is your effort actually moving you forward, or is it just keeping you busy? And that's when Daniel discovered the question that would change everything. A question that separates years of progress from years of invisible drift. A question almost no one asks before it's too late. The direction test. Daniel didn't know the method yet, but he knew one thing. Before he worked another 100 late nights, before he sacrificed another year, he needed to know something most hard-working people never check. Was his effort building his future, or quietly burying it? And the answer to that question was about to shake everything he believed about success. The next morning didn't feel dramatic. No lightning strike of motivation, no sudden clarity, just a quiet tension sitting in Daniel's chest as he drove to work. The same roads, the same coffee, the same building he had entered almost every weekday for the last 7 years. But something inside his mind had shifted, because once you question direction, routine starts looking different. Tasks that once felt productive suddenly feel suspicious. Daniel walked into the office and opened his laptop. His calendar was already full. Meetings, updates, problem-solving sessions, a project that had been urgent for 3 months. For years he had looked at days like this and thought, opportunity. Now another thought surfaced, movement or noise. He didn't cancel anything. He didn't rebel. He simply started observing. And within hours, something strange appeared. Almost everything demanding his time fell into one category: maintenance, fixing issues, updating reports, helping other teams, solving problems that didn't change his long-term position in the company. The work was useful, necessary even, but it didn't move him forward. It kept the machine running. That realization hit him harder than expected, because Daniel had spent years confusing importance with urgency. Urgent work screams the loudest. Emails marked ASAP, deadlines, last-minute emergencies. They feel productive because they require effort. But importance is quieter. Importance shapes direction, and Daniel realized something uncomfortable. Almost none of his time was spent there. He wasn't building leverage. He wasn't developing rare skills. He wasn't positioning himself for influence. He was maintaining the system, and the system rewarded him with more maintenance. That afternoon, during a strategy meeting, Daniel noticed something else. The senior director spoke only twice, short sentences, sharp observations, then silence. Yet everyone in the room adjusted their plans around those comments. Daniel had spoken 10 times in the same meeting, long explanations, detailed solutions, effort. But the director had something Daniel didn't: direction. Influence always looked calm. Effort always looked busy, and that contrast sparked the beginning of the direction test. Not a motivational idea, a filter. A simple way to measure whether effort was building momentum or simply burning energy. That night, Daniel sat in a quiet cafe with a notebook. He wrote one sentence at the top of the page: "If I double my effort in this direction, will my future meaningfully improve?" It was a brutal question, because it ignored how hard something felt. It ignored how busy something looked. It only measured trajectory. Daniel began reviewing the major parts of his work. The first project he examined was the operations report he spent hours maintaining every week. Important. Everyone depended on it. But if he became the best person in the world at maintaining that report, would it transform his career? No. Next, he looked at troubleshooting logistics errors. The company needed someone to handle them, and he was good at it. But mastery there wouldn't create opportunity. It would create dependency. He would become the permanent fixer. Again, the answer appeared. No. Then he looked at something he rarely had time for. Strategic optimization. The work that improved systems instead of maintaining them. The work that reduced problems instead of solving them. He had proposed improvements before. They were well received, but they required deep thinking and uninterrupted focus. Things his schedule rarely allowed. He wrote the question again. If I double my effort here, does my future improve? This time the answer felt different. Yes. Daniel stared at the page. The realization was uncomfortable. The problem wasn't that he lacked opportunities. The problem was that urgency kept stealing the time needed to pursue them. And urgency always disguises itself as responsibility. Say yes to enough urgent things, and eventually you lose control of your direction. That night, he wrote 3 lines underneath the question. The direction test. Step 1. Trajectory. Does this effort move my future somewhere meaningfully different? Step 2. Leverage. Will getting better at this multiply my impact, or just increase my workload? Step 3. Replacement. If I stop doing this, does everything collapse, or does someone else eventually step in? When Daniel applied the test to most of his daily work, the pattern became obvious. High effort. Low trajectory. High responsibility. Low leverage. He had accidentally built a career inside the busiest corner of the system. And systems love people like that. Reliable, helpful, always available. Because those people keep everything running, but they rarely escape. The realization felt both painful and strangely freeing. For years, Daniel believed working harder would unlock progress. But now he understood the trap. Hard work amplifies direction. If the direction is wrong, effort becomes a cage. The next few weeks were uncomfortable. Daniel didn't quit working hard, but he started doing something that felt almost rebellious. He filtered everything through the direction test. Some requests he declined, politely, others he delegated, and a few he delayed long enough that someone else solved them. It felt risky, like stepping away from the identity he had built for years, the reliable one. But slowly, something unexpected began to happen. Space appeared. Not huge amounts, but small pockets of time. An hour here, 2 hours there. Enough to start thinking about systems instead of problems. Enough to work on improvements instead of repairs. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt a different kind of momentum. Not frantic, focused, but change rarely happens without resistance. And the system he had supported for years wasn't about to release him easily. Because when you stop being the person who fixes everything, everything starts breaking. And Daniel was about to learn that passing the direction test doesn't make life easier. It makes it uncomfortable first. Because when your direction changes, the world around you pushes back. The resistance started quietly. At first it was just small comments. Daniel, you used to handle this. Can you jump in real quick? It'll only take a minute. The same requests that had once defined his reputation. For years he would have said yes immediately, automatically, because being helpful felt like progress. But now the direction test sat in the back of his mind like a quiet referee. Trajectory, leverage, replacement, 3 questions, 3 filters, and most requests failed them instantly. The first week he declined a task. He felt guilty the entire day. His chest tightened. His brain kept whispering the same thought. You're becoming lazy. But he knew that voice wasn't truth. It was conditioning, because people who build their identity around effort feel uncomfortable the moment they stop overextending. The second week was worse. Problems started appearing. Systems he used to maintain began slipping. Reports were late. Errors went unresolved longer than usual. People noticed. A manager stopped by his desk. "Everything okay? You seem less involved lately." It wasn't an accusation, just curiosity. But Daniel knew what it meant. The system had grown used to his energy, and systems resist when energy disappears. For a moment he considered going back, jumping in, fixing everything like he always had, returning to the role everyone understood, reliable, indispensable, stuck. But something stopped him, because once you see misdirection clearly, returning to it feels impossible. So Daniel stayed uncomfortable. He kept protecting the small windows of focused work he had carved out, 2 hours each morning, phone silent, email closed, working on the thing that had always been pushed aside. System optimization, not repairs, design, not reaction. At first the progress felt painfully slow. No instant recognition, no immediate praise, just quiet thinking, testing ideas, mapping inefficiencies no one had time to notice. And for weeks nothing changed, which is exactly the moment most people quit. Because direction-based work rarely produces immediate validation, it compounds quietly, invisible at first, until one day it doesn't. 6 weeks later, Daniel finished a model that automated a major portion of the logistics error tracking system, a problem that had consumed hundreds of human hours every month, including many of his own late nights. He didn't present it dramatically, just shared the prototype during a weekly meeting. The room went silent, not the awkward kind, the calculating kind. People were running the numbers in their heads. Reduced errors, reduced hours, reduced costs. The director leaned forward slightly. "How long did this take you?" Daniel answered honestly. "About 6 weeks." Another pause. Then the director asked something unexpected. "Why weren't we doing this already?" Daniel almost laughed, because the answer was painfully simple. Everyone was too busy fixing problems to redesign them. Hard work had been everywhere. Direction had not. Within 2 months, the model was implemented across the department. Within 4 months, it expanded to another division. And suddenly Daniel's name started appearing in conversations he wasn't even part of. Not because he worked the hardest, but because he changed the trajectory of a system. That's when the final realization hit him. Hard work creates motion, but direction creates impact. And the difference between those two decides the speed of your life. Years can pass in motion. Progress happens in direction. Most people never realize this. They keep grinding, keep pushing, keep proving their work ethic. But they never stop to test whether the effort is pointed somewhere valuable. So they spend decades accelerating in circles. Daniel almost did the same, until one uncomfortable question interrupted the pattern. If I double my effort here, does my future meaningfully improve? That question became his compass, not just for work, for everything. Projects, partnerships, opportunities, even relationships, because the direction test works everywhere. Trajectory. Does this move my life somewhere meaningful? Leverage. Does improving here multiply my results? Replacement. If I step away, does the world collapse or adjust? 3 questions. That's all. But those 3 questions can save you 10 years. Because the most dangerous trap in life isn't laziness, it's hard-working misdirection. The world respects effort, but the world rewards alignment. And the moment you understand that, your identity changes. You stop measuring your days by exhaustion. You start measuring them by trajectory. You stop asking, did I work hard today? You start asking, did I move forward today? Those are not the same question. One builds pride, the other builds a future. So if you remember only one thing from Daniel's story, let it be this. Before you work harder, before you sacrifice more time, before you commit another year of effort, pause. Ask the question most people are too busy to ask. If I double my effort in this direction, will my life actually change? Because hard work is powerful, but direction decides whether that power builds something meaningful or simply burns years you never get back. Choose your direction carefully, then work harder than anyone,